We will go ahead and get started. My name is Amelia Quartz, and I am president of the Education Alliance. The Education Alliance exists to mobilize business and community support for public schools. We are passionate about helping all West Virginia students be ready for successful next steps after graduation. And today, as we welcome all of you, we're so thankful for our strong network of business partners that have sponsored today's summit. So please join me in recognizing first our silver sponsor, Toyota Motor Manufacturing, West Virginia. Toyota, I know we have several folks. Will you please stand? Stand. We also have several bronze sponsors. I'm going to read them all. AT&T, Bowles Rice, EQT Foundation, Mountain Health Network, and ZMM Architects and Engineers. Please stand and join me in thanking our sponsors. We also have friend sponsors, Steely Foundation and United Bank. Please stand. Thank you very much. We have several innovations for this year's summit. First, our theme, Jumpstarting Student Career Pathways. We know that COVID has been not only a disruption, but also a real inflection point for our society. And we believe that Jumpstarting Student Career Pathways is important in this time, not just for the connection and impact on workforce development, but most importantly, because it pushes forward this message of doubling down on dynamic learning. We are excited about this. We have a great agenda for you, and we also have an innovation around our hybrid audience. So I'd like to welcome those of you that are joining us online and in person. And I'd ask that you'd be patient with us. We may have some hybrid glitches along the way, but we're excited to try this out. And I especially want to recognize some of our officials. I know we had several elected officials that were registered but had committee conflicts. Do we have any elected officials with us in the room today? I don't see any. Okay. West Virginia Board of Education members also. They're on their way, so we'll welcome them when they get here. We have philanthropic partners, the Benedum and Steely Foundation. I know a couple of you folks are in the room. Please stand, be recognized. Thank you. And then finally, our Education Alliance board members. If you're a member of the board of directors, please stand. Thank you for your support. Our final innovation for today's summit is our agenda. You'll find that it's a compact but engaging agenda. I really want to thank our keynote, Dave Zazada, for encouraging us to avoid Zoom fatigue. And so we have an exciting agenda for you over the next 2 hours. Normally this is a full day, but although our attendees online will be muted throughout, we encourage you to use the chat function to send your questions and comments for speakers, and we'll also have time for a breakout and some table discussions. And we also have, for the first time, lots of people joining us by Facebook Live. And so if you're on social media, we would ask that you use our summit hashtag, which is WVED Summit. So let's begin with a quick look at our agenda. Should have a copy on your table or on the website if you're online. And it's again built around this summit theme of Jumpstarting Student Career Pathways. You'll see our first session, our dynamic, nationally recognized keynote speaker. Today, we're honored to have with us Intuit's Vice President, Dave Zazada. And Dave will really be speaking to the why career pathways matter right now. Immediately following, we'll have a brief networking break. And then our second session we're pleased to have State Superintendent of Schools Clayton Birch, who will be joining Dave for a fireside chat. Next, we'll transition to one of my favorite traditions at the summit, which is our Student Expo. And we are featuring Washington High School from Jefferson County this year, virtually zooming in with us. And our third and final session will be kicked off with a special opportunity announcement. And then we'll hear from Lisa Deck, who is from the NMAC Center at Purdue University. And Lisa will really be getting into the nuts and bolts of how she's working to bring the 4T model of career pathway system to West Virginia. So again, I want to welcome all of you. We're so happy that you would join us and spend your day and your afternoon with us. And at this point, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Sally Barton, Vice President of the Education Alliance, who will be moderating today's summit. Sally?
Thank you, Amelia. Welcome, everyone. Again, I'm Sally Barton with the Education Alliance, and I'm so pleased to introduce our keynote speaker. Dave Zazada is Intuit's Vice President for Corporate Responsibility. He leads all corporate responsibility programs for Intuit, helping millions of individuals become better prepared for jobs, as well as driving efforts to have a positive impact on our climate. He's focused on increasing educational equity for students in underserved communities by providing free access to programs that build durable skills for a modern global workplace. Prior to taking his current role in 2019, Dave was Vice President of Education for Intuit. In that role, he supported schools and universities across the country by providing real-world tools as part of their career and financial readiness programs. Before joining Intuit, he previously held a number of senior leadership roles in education technology organizations, where he consistently worked to empower and inspire educators and students to reach their career goals. He currently serves as a board member for the Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization and the Jumpstart Coalition, as well as an advisory board member for DECA. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker of the 2021 Summit, Dave Zazada.
Thank you, Sally. Appreciate that kind introduction. And thank you and your team for once again organizing an amazing event. It's a sincere privilege to have the opportunity to engage with such an innovative group of thought leaders and influencers. And I look forward to hearing what's on your mind and learning from you after the initial keynote, and we have an opportunity to move into the fireside chat. But before I get to that, I'd like to share some thoughts on the importance of preparing students for jobs today and how businesses and educators can partner together to help students become career ready. I'll share a few examples along the way and unpack how I've applied them before wrapping up with a couple of suggestions on what you can do. But first, I'd like to share just a little bit about myself. So, as Sally had mentioned, I've worked in the education ecosystem really my entire career. And while I was never a full-time teacher or administrator, I was always a developer and provider of educational programs and services to the students and teachers and administrators who I've ultimately proudly served. And I will say both my son Dylan and my daughter Caitlin are teachers, and they inspire me every day, but no more so than this past year, as I watch both of them teach students every day, and students with special needs, by the way, via Zoom. I currently have the privilege of working for Intuit as their leader of corporate responsibility. And for those not familiar with Intuit, we're a global financial platform that powers over 100 million customers using our QuickBooks, TurboTax, Mint, and Credit Karma products. In my corporate responsibility role, I have the opportunity to help better prepare students for jobs of the future through free entrepreneurship and finance and career exploration programs, which we make available to underserved school districts through our Prosperity Hub school district program. While we work with school systems all over the world, I've had the opportunity to spend quite a bit of time over the past few years in West Virginia with K-12 and higher ed institutions, as well as small businesses. I've learned about some amazing existing programs that you have there, such as Simulated Workplace, as well as innovative new programs currently being piloted, such as the Entrepreneurship Pathway and Empowerment Districts. I partnered with Marshall University to teach into its design thinking methodology to their business school faculty to be used as an engine for innovation and change. And the level to which this has been embraced, adopted, and actually applied at Marshall, inspiring. Also had the opportunity to spend time in Bluefield and the surrounding area, which is home to one of Intuit's Prosperity Hubs. Our Prosperity Hub program is focused on creating jobs and also supporting local economies in targeted communities. And although I'm not from West Virginia, I've spent enough time there that I'm starting to feel like I am. I even have a new favorite place to eat. And while I've eaten at some incredible restaurants across West Virginia, there's nothing quite like a hillbilly hot dog. So that is my favorite place to eat. Along the way, I've heard so many amazing stories while in West Virginia and met so many incredible people who have a passion to power prosperity for West Virginia students, businesses, and communities. The work being done in West Virginia is as innovative as any I have seen across the country. I just wish you were more comfortable being a little less humble about yourself and willing to share your story of innovation impact with others. But I'm trying to do my part to help with that as I spread the word as I work with school districts all around the country. Your willingness to experiment quickly with the goal to have a greater impact is very unique. I sincerely feel that West Virginia is an incubator for great ideas that the rest of the country can learn from. And there has never been a greater need for new ideas. We have to recognize that the future is very different than the past we have operated in. And this has created new challenges that are impacting students, educators, and businesses. And I wanted to highlight just a couple of challenges I feel are key. And those are, first, the emergence of the gig economy. And the second is how COVID is changing the world of work. Jobs like Uber, DoorDash once represented 17% of the workforce just 25 years ago, but they are 34% of all jobs today, and well on their way to being 50% in 7 years. The rise of the gig economy has created the need to have an entrepreneurial mindset. Whether a student will someday start a side hustle or a small business or work for an existing company, an entrepreneurial mindset is a basic life skill that must be learned. There's no question that the past 18 months have been a challenge due to COVID. COVID has also tested us in ways that will pay significant dividends in the future. The permanent shift to hybrid or remote working that COVID has driven is being embraced by most industries. Technology companies like Intuit, such as Apple, Google, Microsoft, Twitter, Spotify, and others, have already announced pilot programs that either include a hybrid or a remote return to work plan option, which represents an incredible shift in how we work. And this provides an opportunity because while talent is equally distributed, opportunity traditionally has not been. And employers are now recognizing having an increased number of remote roles results in a more diverse workforce and an even broader pipeline of talent. Talented individuals historically not living near the offices of companies like these now have opportunity to pursue much higher paying career paths without having to relocate. And in addition, although COVID will obviously be remembered for the pain and the disruption that it's caused on so many, it will also be remembered for the incredible stories of those who had the skills to adapt and pivot. The pace of change today was already expected to be 10 times faster than it was just 5 years ago, due to shifts in technology, such as the emergence of the cloud and machine learning and artificial intelligence. However, due to COVID, educators and business owners were each faced with incredible challenges and the need to change at a pace never before seen. But remember that the strongest steel is forged in the hottest fires. There are amazing local and national stories of success from those who have skills to adapt and pivot and either improve on an existing model or create a brand new one. It's become clear that to be successful, regardless of their chosen career paths, students must have these skills. While many small businesses were hurt by the pandemic, there has also been a 24% increase in the number of business startups. This is a reflection of the need and the opportunity to adapt, pivot, and innovate when challenged. Now I'd like to share 3 ways I believe we can address challenges related to the rise of the gig economy as well as COVID. These include developing durable skills, supporting entrepreneurship education, and collaborating on career pathways. And I'll start with developing durable skills. Durable skills are what we historically have called soft or 21st century skills. They include skills such as leadership, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, adaptability, and more. Although people have historically been hired for their technical skills, they tend to get fired for their lack of durable skills. And durable skills are in demand by employers now more than ever. America Succeeds is a nonprofit organization committed to improving education opportunity, outcomes, and equity. It's an organization that positions itself as a bridge between business and education. They conducted research to identify the most common characteristics employers look for in potential employees. And as part of the research, they studied over 80 million job postings from the past 2 years across 20 different business sectors and found 64% of those jobs require durable skills. Intuit was one of the companies they studied. And over the past 2 years, we posted over 50,000 jobs and 90% have required 3 or more durable skills. America Succeeds also found that the top 5 durable skills are more in demand than the top 5 technical skills. And 7 of the 10 most requested were durable skills. Now, students living through COVID have been forced to develop some of these critical durable skills that are necessary for succeeding in the 21st century, and those include adaptability and resilience. To quote Charles Darwin, "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It is the one most adaptable to change." And with COVID, students have been living through the greatest application of adaptability in the last 100 years. As for resilience, or simply stated grit, it's the combination of passion and perseverance in pursuit of a goal. Winston Churchill was right when he famously stated that the definition of success is the ability to go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm. Success requires grit. And given what students have lived through the past 2 years, they have developed unparalleled levels of grit. So while COVID has forced the development of some critical durable skills, educators and businesses need to work together to better prepare students with the durable skills they need to compete for jobs. At Intuit, we believe teaching real-world tools and methodologies through experiential project-based learning is key. Over the past few years, we have been focused on teaching administrators, educators, and students our version of design thinking. For those not familiar with design thinking, it's a proven methodology developed by some of the most brilliant innovators in the world. And it is a Silicon Valley best practice used to create the most successful innovations and the most valuable companies of our time. And it is one of the most sought after skills by employers. Design thinking is a discovery-driven approach to problem solving that requires running rapid experiments and embracing the mindset of failing fast and quickly pivoting if something isn't working so that you can succeed later. It's about doing versus just debating. Quickly testing and proving ideas with evidence and data versus assumptions is key. Design thinking requires critical thinking, collaboration, communication, leadership, adaptability, and grit. In other words, it requires and builds durable skills. At Intuit, we've created a variety of free resources that educators can use to teach and apply design thinking. And through our own social impact challenge, we teach students how to use design thinking to innovate and solve big problems in their own communities aligned to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Problems such as poverty, climate action, and gender and racial equality. They apply design thinking by developing empathy for a problem they care about, identify potential solutions, build prototypes, run experiments, and are then evaluated on what they've learned and how they pivoted, not just on the final idea. The way I mentioned is to support entrepreneurship courses, programs, and pathways. 50% of the world's workforce works in small businesses or startups, and they are responsible for creating 70% of all new jobs. They are the backbone of the global economy, and that is even more relevant in Appalachia. Supporting entrepreneurship education results in the development of an entrepreneurial mindset that is critical for a student, whether they're planning to someday start a business or work for an existing one. And students in rural or underserved areas are some of the most in need of the exposure to entrepreneurship education, as they are less likely to see starting a business as a viable pathway for them. In many cases, they are even discouraged by adults around them from considering such a path out of fear of failure. Given the growth of the gig economy and the demand for entrepreneurship skills by employers, supporting entrepreneurship education is critical. And finally, the third approach is for educators and businesses to collaborate together on career awareness and exploration programs. Mark Twain once said that the two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. It's important to expose kids to careers they have not yet dreamed of early, so they have time to explore. One example of how Intuit has tried to help is by partnering with school districts through our Career Readiness Conference. Students have an opportunity to hear from nationally recognized and inspirational speakers on how to discover their why, and then select and attend multiple career pathway breakout sessions that interest them. There they can learn about and engage with Intuit early career employees who talk about their jobs and the paths they took to get there. In addition to career awareness programs, it's also important to provide students with the opportunity to learn by actually doing versus just shadowing. Employers are increasingly skeptical of GPAs due to grade inflation and credit hours earned with little retained knowledge. Most employers have now moved towards testing for competency in the interview process, providing applicants with an opportunity to talk about and demonstrate where they have learned and applied skills in real life situations. West Virginia already does an outstanding job with this through Simulated Workplace. At Intuit, we're currently piloting a career pathway challenge with Dallas Independent School District, where students use design thinking to learn about different career paths and then, with support from Intuit employees, work on a project related to a career they have potential interest in. The workshop is just a few hours long and is designed to be an experiential intro to various careers. Our goal is to extend the Career Pathway Challenge and provide opportunities for internships or apprenticeships. So these are just two examples of what we're doing to partner with school districts in support of career awareness and exploration. Which brings me back to you and the question, what can you do? Regardless of your role, I would first encourage you to commit to being the change you seek. For those in education, I would also encourage you to constantly disrupt yourself. And that is not easy. In fact, it's really hard. I've been consistently impressed with how West Virginia has shown the grit to do this. It takes a willingness to participate in learning from those who have tried and succeeded, as well as those who have failed. It takes perseverance in knowing that many of your own experiments will also fail. But with each try, you can push one step closer to making an exciting vision a reality. On an individual basis, everyone is for change until it happens to them. But the reality is change is inevitable, and it can either happen through you or it can happen to you. It's your choice. There was an article in Fortune a few years back about how Intuit's success is linked to its focus on constantly disrupting itself. At Intuit, we operate like a 36-year-old startup. All employees are taught to treat every day like it is. And I'd like to share what we've learned are the 3 keys that enable us to constantly disrupt ourselves. First, it begins with leadership. The role of the leader is to communicate the art of the possible, the better tomorrow, and that change will enable us to make a dent in the universe. The second thing is to treat success and failure the same, as an opportunity to learn and pivot. And one of the most popular books in Silicon Valley is called Getting to Plan B. That's because 93% of the startups that succeed in Silicon Valley actually struck gold on an idea that was completely different than the one they started out with. YouTube actually started out as a dating site. Instagram started as a whiskey app. Shopify started as a snowboard company. And Netflix started with D4Ds, just to name a few. And finally, measure success in the only way that it matters, through the eyes of your customer, especially if that customer is a student. Always fall in love with their problem and not your own existing solution. For those in business, I would encourage you to partner with educational institutions at all levels. Share your technology, share your techniques, share the types of skills you're looking for when hiring and developing your employees. We must collaborate with teachers and curriculum designers to create a type of education that's experiential and engaging. And keep in mind, when partnering together, it should always be about value co-creation, where the collaboration results in a greater impact. Because remember, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So in closing, when those in education, business, and the community partner together, we can better prepare students today for the jobs of tomorrow and choose a career pathway that will power them to put their own dent in the universe. As I wrap up my remarks, I'd like to share a short video from Intuit Executive Chairman and Education Alliance supporter, Brad Smith.
Hi, my name is Brad Smith, and I'm a native of West Virginia, and I currently serve as the Executive Chairman of the board at Intuit. Like you, I'm devoted to trying to help West Virginia be the best we can be. And I'm excited to share an innovative opportunity for our K-12 school system to participate in a year-long professional learning community. It studies, observes, and learns how to build career pathways with industry partners in West Virginia high schools. My friend, Srini Madam, serves as the president of Toyota, and he's working with the Education Alliance to launch this effort. Now, you can learn more about this effort by visiting educationalliance.org. Please spread the word to students, educators, and businesses. I look forward to celebrating and scaling the exciting results in the months and the years to come. Thank you so much for all that you do.
One word or phrase that resonates with you from Dave's talk. We're going to ask our online participants to chat that one word or phrase. And then for those of you here, you'll find a card on the table. If you would write on the card your one word or phrase right now. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to fill that out. Okay, we are excited to transition to our first breakout session. For our online participants, we're going to put you in small groups. And for those of you here in the room, I want you to discuss at your table. I'd like you to introduce yourself and then share your one word or phrase with your colleagues and your why. You'll have 5 minutes to do this. Let's go ahead and get started. Give me 1 minute. You have 2 minutes. Okay, let's come back together. Chat room should be closed. I hope you had engaging conversation and maybe met someone new at your table. So as we enter the fireside chat, I want to remind you that we'll have time for some Q&A with our two speakers at the end. So I encourage you to jot down questions as they come up to you. So now it's my pleasure to introduce State Superintendent of Schools, Clayton Birch. Superintendent Birch was appointed by the West Virginia Board of Education as the 32nd State Superintendent of Schools in February of 2020. He has served as an advisor to national organizations, the U.S. Department of Education, multiple governors, particularly with regards to his experience in early childhood education. His passion for and commitment to the Mountain State has allowed him to use his leadership to advance the status of teaching and learning while serving the children and families of West Virginia. Superintendent Birch, we look forward to hearing from you and continuing your conversation with Dave. Superintendent Birch.
Thank you, Sally. Sally, I appreciate it. And Dave, I'm not sure about you. Do you have a fireside going on there? No fire here. They didn't provide one.
I do not. I live in Chicago, though, and I can tell you that we've already fireplaces roaring.
Amelia, by the way, is completely used to this. She knows that she'll give me a script and I won't stick to it. And Amelia, I'll try to stay in the seat, though. So, Dave, that was actually a very inspiring keynote. And it's interesting that I want to actually, as we give some examples of West Virginia, I want to tie in some of those key strategies you actually talked about, the durable skills, entrepreneurship, and that idea around entrepreneurship, and also the awareness and pathways. And if I start off and talk a little bit about where West Virginia is, it's interesting, to take over in February of 2020, and 2 weeks later, close the school system down for COVID. It feels like my entire tenure so far has been focused on COVID issues. But that does not mean that during this time, we haven't been able to step back and kind of see what's worked and what hasn't worked, or to reflect with some of our state partners on what's worked and what hasn't worked. And it's interesting, when Sally introduced me, I'm still mainly known, if I go anywhere in DC or around the nation, I'm still mainly known as the early childhood guy. That is my background, that's my passion. I've even got Howard Sufer up here shaking his head because that's how Howard knows me. That's my background. And it's interesting to be in a room where you have somebody like Senator Jackson sitting back there, and Lloyd and I have known each other for a long time, and he probably knows that first and foremost, I will say that most people in most states overlook one of the most innovative things West Virginia ever did. We're only one of a handful of states that actually put in place a universal preschool system. And if you want to know when and where children begin to develop those durable skills, that's it. If you ever go into a high quality early childhood classroom, you are going to see them developing those skills. And in the past, it's been told it was soft skills or executive functioning skills. Dave's example of durable skills is spot on. Our partners throughout the state, it doesn't matter whether we work in state government, we work with business and industry, each and every one of them want students coming out of our system that have those really solid, durable skills. And we've got to start early, and we see them developed early. Now, of course, during the pandemic, we saw one of the largest drop-offs in preschool and kindergarten enrollment that we've seen in 40 years in the state of West Virginia. So one of my biggest fears is going to be, how do we fill that gap as they move through the system if they missed any of that? But I want to talk a little bit about some other things that Dave alluded to for the state of West Virginia, and move off of just what I consider to be very innovative, which is in 2002, the state putting the preschool into place. State Board of Education met this morning and throughout the day. And this morning we got to actually visit with some national winners from our career technical education competitions. And 4 of them joined us virtually. I think we recognized 13 or 14 young people, everything from competing nationwide in careers in education to the FFA, to technical skills and computer. We had a gentleman on cybersecurity. He won, second or third place in the nation on cybersecurity. And these are young people that, as you watch them speak, the systems worked for them. They found a pathway. They found somewhere somebody was that one caring adult that got them on track. And they worked their way through the system. But the problem is sometimes the system isn't set up for all. And it's hard for folks to find that pathway. And we've got to get innovative. And to hear that the Education Alliance, along with the State Board of Education, and later on, I will talk a little bit about some legislators. They like when I talk about them. They enjoy it. Is Senator Rucker in here anymore? Oh, she stepped out? Oh, now's the perfect time to talk about her. I know. So, but this idea that Jumpstarting Careers is the title I believe that the Education Alliance is utilizing. But one of the things that Dave mentioned in his opening remarks is this idea that we've got to start earlier. And it's not about a child necessarily knowing exactly what they want to do. We have a fifth grader in the room today, and she's already figured things out better and faster than I ever did at fifth grade. She's going to be a doctor. She's going to be amazing. She knows what she wants to do, and she's right back there getting food, but she didn't want to speak today. This idea that we push that Jumpstarting Careers down into middle school is really, really important. And it's a conversation that when we get to a little further in the presentation, we'll discuss. Secondly, you heard Dave mention entrepreneurship. And I was really, really glad to hear him mention that. We have a wonderful partnership with WVU and Marshall University. These two universities have partnered together to offer this work around entrepreneurship, as well as, I'm sure Dave is very aware of Design for Delight, which really pushes these ideas of entrepreneurship and those entrepreneurship skills into our middle school curriculum. Getting folks to think. He talked about grit and resiliency. If ever there was a time in educational history that we have a group of students that have shown that, you heard Dave say earlier, this is the time. The last 2 years, these students have had to persevere and move forward, and it has shown a ton of grit. You heard him mention simulated workplace. This is something that has been in West Virginia for quite some time. We have states and actually now countries that come to us to look at how to embed this into their programming. And it's hard because Dr. D'Antoni, who is one of my just dear friends, and then her partner in crime happened to be my brother, Clinton Birch. And these two individuals would talk about simulated workplace and project-based learning. And being the preschool guy, I had to say, really? 25 years ago, I worked in Kuwait City. I was in Italy, met some of the biggest and brightest minds in the early childhood world. And they were using terms like project-based learning, simulating careers in early childhood. To see this now move up and take such hold in West Virginia high schools has been absolutely amazing. And what it means to our business partners when they're able to connect to those schools. And Amelia, you've been absolutely wonderful helping us connect business partners to schools, because moving forward, we have a lot of work to do around these apprenticeships and internships and career readiness. So, and I don't want to not mention Chancellor Tucker. I know that she couldn't be here tonight, but Chancellor Sarah Tucker has been probably one of the best partners we could have asked for. When you're able to challenge your state agency partners and say, we need to break some things down, we need to rethink career pathways in the state of West Virginia. Is it truly seamless for students to go from high school to a 1-year, 2-year, 4-year, or into the workplace? Is it truly seamless? Are we doing it together? Or is it these separate stages that they have to figure out each time they move forward? So that's some of the innovation. And I know that, David, I know you see across the state these examples of innovation, especially when it comes to career pathways and how they're developed. Could you give us a little insight, maybe nationwide?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And the first I think will really hit home. The example is from Washoe County School District in Nevada. And, if you ask their head of CTE, what their most innovative initiative is right now, it's simulated workplace. The reason why is because, as I mentioned, I'm focused on talking about the great work that you all are doing in West Virginia, all around the country when we work with our school districts. And I've shared information on simulated workplace with these districts, and we were looking to try to experiment to see if the model can be implemented and adopted more nationally. And I'm very familiar with the fact that so many states and countries have come to West Virginia to learn. And what really kind of interested me was what was happening after they went away. Were they struggling with implementation, and why? And so we've kind of taken on the challenge of trying to figure out how to package, if you will, some of the great resources around simulated workplace and help it be ultimately implemented in school districts. So Washoe is doing that, and with the support from West Virginia educators and trainers over the past year, they are now piloting simulated workplace in 4 CTE classes this school year, and it's off to a great start. They recently ran their own district-wide training on simulated workplace just a couple weeks ago, and the data they gave me was that 63% of the CTE teachers indicated they were interested, just based on that training, to receive additional training and actually start a year 1 implementation in school year, in this actually school year. So that's one example, and just that hopefully hits home. The second I wanted to share was from San Diego Unified School District. They have 2 career pathways that they've really been focused on, that I know that they're proud of and feel are innovative. The first is an entrepreneurial pathway, where they collaborate with local community colleges in order to be able to offer college credit. They strongly believe students benefit from an entrepreneurial mind, which is why they've kind of invested in this pathway. And it has a special focus on social entrepreneurship. And so they piloted this pathway over the last couple of years. It's been a big success, been very popular with students, and now they're expanding it to additional schools in the district. And then the second pathway that they're very excited about is their environmental engineering pathway. So this is a pathway that's focused on sustainable solutions for the community in which the students live. It's become very popular as sustainable communities are important and very interesting to students everywhere. And then the last I'll just quickly mention is from Oakland Unified School District, and it's their patient care pathway. So this pathway has been planned backward to forward with local fire departments. They believe that their model is both teacher and student centered based on their approach. And so their approach is that as first step, is that they align the world of work with teachers first by having them participate in externships to gain experience and understanding of the career pathway. And then the second step is that they have the teachers go back and share their personal newfound experience for that pathway with the students. And then step 3 is that there's a work-based learning internships that are offered and available to students. And they believe this approach really creates an ongoing partnership versus one-off projects with external partners, and really considered a win-win scenario because students need hands-on learning opportunities, and the fire department wants to hire local and diverse talent, and both needs are currently being met. So those are just a couple of examples. If we had time, I could share more, but Clayton, we've both shared some innovative successes. But when you think about this very important work, what's one thing that ultimately keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I have a lot of restless nights. And that's in all sincerity, because we have these wonderful programs that we're trying to put together and promote. I know we've got probably Scott Roetrucks in the room here, and he'll talk about, we'll talk about our entrepreneurship pathway or our aerospace or manufacturing. We're doing some work around healthcare and education. And these are all wonderful, wonderful pathways. But what ends up happening is keeping me up at night is West Virginia as a whole is, what I say is our teachers and the education system is quite stressed right now. and it's stressed for a lot of reasons. And we all know why, the COVID impact, but I don't know that sometimes we realize just how big of an impact this could end up having on us. So before West Virginia even hit COVID, we talked a lot about being a state in crisis anyways. I mean, we have wonderful systems, we have wonderful schools, they're doing everything they can for children. But when you're a state that is facing a little over 17% poverty rate, leading top of the nation in opioid deaths, mortality rate, right over 7,000 children in the foster care system. We'll get new numbers, but 2 years ago, we were pushing close to 8,000 or 9,000 children identified as homeless. We're not even getting into the CPS and other issues the state and these teachers face. And then we place and throw COVID on top of that. So think about being a first grade teacher this year. When you started first grade as a teacher this year, this was the first time in 40 years that a first grade teacher will have children in her classroom that have never stepped in a brick or mortar building. 52,000 children in the state of West Virginia did not attend a brick or mortar building last year. 52,000. A lot of preschool and kindergarten children did not attend school. So we have first grade teachers that will have children who never stepped in school. As you move up through and really have the concerns of how bad this pandemic was on the system, we also move up through middle school and high school. And here we are trying to do everything we can to keep the engagement, the students that wanted to be engaged. Maybe they were enrolled in a welding course. Maybe they are enrolled in building and construction. Whatever it might have been, every time that school closed down, it was harder and harder to engage those students in that hands-on, the necessary hands-on. We have a county that on August 30th, I believe, of this year, had more days of instruction this year than they had the entire fall semester last year of in-person instruction. By August 30th, those children had been in school longer than they had the entire fall semester. So if you're one of these students that were trying to engage and be part of these necessary hands-on career technical education, how far behind or how far of a gap was there caused? Now, Dave, this is really what keeps me up at night. We all in education have talked about the achievement gap, the equity gap, whatever you want to call it. We've talked about it, and it already existed. Throw all of these on top of what has happened the last year and a half. How many high-risk students are now further behind? We all thought that technology was going to be the savior for us. That did not last very long. However, I will still appreciate everything the governor and commerce and workforce did to assist getting Kids Connect out and trying to put out as much access as possible. We just aren't there. We do not have the access that we thought we had. And even where we had the access, we don't necessarily have an entire population that was ready to utilize that access for that purpose. It became very apparent by January of this year that we had to make a change, and we had to make a bold change. And West Virginia was one of the first states when the State Board of Education stepped in January. Scott, somebody had a date, January 19th? January the 19th of this year. And yes, it might have seemed a little controversial, but they said, no, we must come back in school. We must have mitigation strategies, but it's just too important for the children. Young, middle school, older, it didn't matter. We had to have them in person with these teachers. The Senate Bill 303, House Bill 4790, those are numbers we throw around. I love throwing those numbers around in board meetings too, because even I get confused, Tom. But we also had something happen during the pandemic. We actually had some things pass as people sat back and was able to reflect on what really is important and always put first things first. And we actually now have bills where we have Discover Your Future. We have kind of a freedom of information for students. It's the Right to Know Act. And we just launched it today. And I encourage Dave on Chicago or anybody in here although it might not work for Dave unless he wants to move to West Virginia. It's wvclassroom2career.com. And it's actually the number 2, wvclassroom2career.com. This website actually came out of these pieces of legislation when we said, how do we help children and families, one, that have been disconnected from the school system, missed opportunities as middle schoolers? How do we provide some resources for them to really look at career potentials in the state of West Virginia and what it takes to get there? I encourage everybody to look at it, but back to your original, question, Dave, is that I'm most concerned about just how wide that gap has gotten, especially for our most at-risk and vulnerable children, and how much time we need to dedicate to them, because I think that's what they need. They now need time with their educators. And, trying to tie it back to some ways back to career pathways. What are your thoughts, Dave, on, supporting those high need students, or how to get back into this true idea of access for those that have really missed some of these opportunities?
Yeah, well, geez, that's the eternal question right there. What I know that many school districts are trying to unpack this year in particular, I think there's 3 or 4 things that come to mind that, that ultimately could be done as you think trying to increase equity, especially for those who are marginalized. The first is really kind of to think about how you brand, recruit, promote career pathways to these marginalized groups of kids. Developing marketing that's targeted specifically at kids from underrepresented and underprivileged backgrounds. You can work with communications team if you actually have one, or maybe an external marketing firm, or even a simulated workplace marketing firm. This would include thinking about how you reach students at an earlier age. To your point, Clayton, a few minutes ago about going kind of earlier, by working closer with middle schools and making personal connections with with the teachers as well as the students there. So I think that there's an opportunity to really think about how you brand and market career pathways and CTE to the kids you're targeting. The second, I think, is data, and continuously harvesting and reviewing high quality data. There's typically no lack of data. However, it can be a struggle, getting a clear read on what a high need student ultimately needs. But I know at Intuit, we believe you focus on what you can measure. So, really kind of understanding the data and setting clear goals is important. And really addressing this so the data can inform every move a state or district makes is critical. The third thing that comes to mind is really about barriers, and you alluded to this as well when you kind of talked about the system isn't set up for all. Perhaps the best way to even the playing field and increase equity is to break down barriers, that are there, and they can be environmental barriers or they can be system barriers. If they're environmental barriers, I think about the fact that many students from rural or urban neighborhoods don't personally know a scientist or an engineer or professionals in other careers, as an example. And environmental barriers can prevent students from really seeing themselves in these roles. So thinking about how to really break those barriers down would be one. And with system barriers, sometimes the barrier, that are in place for good reasons, such as like a prerequisite class or attendance or the need to start at a certain grade, can ultimately prevent the students who really need those services from accessing them. In addition to that, common challenge is a lack of support, at home is common with these students that we're talking about, and they need a champion who can help them when it comes to the need to contest some barriers. So without someone to fight for them, students end up being left out. And the last thing that I'll throw out there, is to apply design thinking toward the problem. And Intuit's approach to design thinking is designed for delight. If this is considered a big challenge in West Virginia, I'd just like to offer Intuit would be happy to volunteer our time to work with you to help come up with innovative solutions to try to address this equity issue. And we would start by developing more empathy for those impacted to really understand them and understand the problems that they face. and then collaborate, with you to come up with some potential solutions to prototype, run experiments, and learn from. So those are the things I think about, when it comes to really addressing this equity issue with those marginalized students. So, Clayton, in your role as state superintendent, I know you work closely with the State Board of Ed, as you mentioned, and legislative leaders on state policy. Can you highlight a few policy successes there in West Virginia for advancing career pathways?
Yeah, and I'll go pretty quickly to try to keep Amelia on time. So a couple just kind of things to think about is I kind of alluded to it earlier on, is this idea of relationships is actually not just personally important to me, but I think we've seen the State Board and others believe that to tackle these problems, we're going to have really, really good relationships, whether that be relationships with the state legislators, the governor, Higher Education Policy Commission, business. You've got to have good relationships. And one of the things we've seen out of those relationships is, for example, we're tackling the healthcare issues here in West Virginia. To have on the same page, whether it be higher education, the workforce, the legislators, and the state board, we now have a new nursing pathway that starts actually in middle school. And we can actually attract and really begin leveraging what it takes to hit these milestones in the nursing career pathway. And we've never seen a seamless pathway all the way through 4-year and beyond, all the way down into middle school for something like nursing. And those are those replications we need to have happen with other pathways as well, whether it be education, aerospace engineering, or others. And the other thing I'll kind of say as a policy lever is it is very, very beneficial to have a state board that, one, is supportive, but two, is willing to be innovative and kind of step out on that limb with you. And what I mean by that is today they just released their revised strategic state plan. And the West Virginia Board of Education, West Virginia Department of Education now have a joint strategic plan. Interesting that Dave said, we tend to focus on things that get measured. And I looked right at Tom Campbell and went, yes, we do. But what's interesting about this is this idea that you've heard Dave and I talk about this entire time is really about tackling this in a new way and really thinking about the whole child, whether it be the marginalized, the at risk, the things that they're struggling with, whether, even though we can't control all of them, but focusing on the whole child. And what's the end product? The end product is we want these children to be successful through the school system and graduate prepared for life. And so what you're going to see in the new strategic plan, of course, are all the metrics and definitions on engagement. But really what's interesting is to have higher education and the state board working together to now have a focus on 3 E's. And that is, we are not pushing children into a 2- and 4-year college and using that as our metric for success any longer. We're actually looking at education. We're looking at employment. We have many students, especially in those entrepreneurship pathways or the trades or whatever it may be, that are ready to go right out of high school into the workplace. And we all know the stories that I wish one of my 4 boys would go one of those routes, because I keep telling them, you're probably going to do better in life, because I don't know if you've called a plumber lately, but good luck. It may cost me more for a plumber than it does to have Dr. Snavely on the state board repair my heart. I'm not sure. Tom, maybe. And then we are also, you're going to see another E on those 3 E's, and that's enlistment. And we really are assisting, for those of you that probably have family members that have served in our armed forces, some of the best career opportunities we see for young people are to enter the armed forces and go that path. But the ability that they got to have the tools necessary to kind of bring this full circle to what Dave said earlier, we have to start earlier. They have to know about those careers and what that pathway looks like back in middle school, and they really do. I think I'm looking for Sally. There she is. So Sally, I don't know that if Dave and I ate up all of our time, or.
We have probably a little bit of time for maybe a single question. I know we asked you all to chat your questions and to write some questions out. Olivia, do you? Okay. 2. Okay, let me see. Well, we have one for each of you. So I'm going to go ahead and be brief with your response, please. For Superintendent Birch, we know you are working with Chancellor Tucker to create pipeline from K-12 to post-secondary. What are our challenges? And are there any quick wins?
A lot, and yes.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. I'm joking. So, yeah, just real quick, the biggest challenges sometimes are sometimes the education system is just not developed and set up to deal with some of that resistance to change. And we need change. We need to, not say that our CTE programs that have been there for 20 years need to continue being there for 20 years. We've got to be responsive to the workforce. So when we see, I think a data point that you heard Dave talk about earlier was, Dave, I think you might have hit 50 or was it 51% of the future workforce will be small business owners and entrepreneurship? He's shaking his head yes. So we've got to change. We actually have to make sure those career pathways are there, and we got to be able to be reactive. So that's the biggest challenge for that pipeline, and for folks to understand that yes, it's difficult to change, but it's reactive to what our economy needs, where the future for these children are going. And the low-hanging fruit, I'm probably going to say is, I got several. We've got partnerships in West Virginia. We are a state that is full of caring, collaborative people. And when we tackled that nursing pathway, and in a short period of time was able to put out an entire, from middle school through post-secondary, a true seamless nursing pathway, and we did it in about under a year, Amelia, yeah, we can do that with other pathways.
Thank you. And Dave, we have one for you. You did touch on durable skills, but this person asked, could you be more specific about what a student should be focusing on?
Yeah, well, when we're talking about durable skills, I mean, we're talking about the ability to demonstrate the ability to collaborate, communicate, show leadership skills, show grit, etc. So, those are really the skills, some of the skills, there's more that kind of roll up underneath durable skills. Those skills are hard, on an everyday basis to teach as well as to measure. That's why, I mean, design thinking is just one opportunity to do that. But by utilizing design thinking, they have the ability to practice each of those different types of skills. And those really, and I can tell you also as a hiring manager, that's really what I focus on when I'm evaluating potential new hires, is I'm more concerned about how they're going to fit with the team, how they're going to collaborate, can they potentially be, can they adapt when inevitably changes come up, et cetera. I dial in more on that and ask for examples of those types of skills than I do, really as much the technical skills. So I hope that helps with the question.
It does. I so wish we had more time. Both of you, thank you so much, Superintendent and Dave. This has been a fabulous discussion. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
So while Superintendent Birch gets back to his seat, I am very happy to welcome via Zoom our Student Expo. This is featuring Washington High School, and they are piloting the Education Alliance's Workforce Learning Program in Jefferson County. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you teacher Caitlin Grantham, who is the 2018 State Teacher of the Year, to guide the expo with her students. Mrs. Grantham.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Caitlin Grantham, and I'm an agriculture teacher at Washington High School, and I also teach the leadership class here. Before we get started, we just wanted to thank the Education Alliance for allowing us to be a part of the Education Summit today, and for providing the work-based learning course for our leadership students here at Washington High School. I'm joined this afternoon by 3 of my students, and they're going to go ahead and introduce themselves before we get started.
Hello, my name is
Hi, I'm Addison Skinner and I'm a sophomore. I'm involved in our school student government.
Hi, my name is Noah Alcantara, and I am a part of the Washington High School band.
All right, so I'm going to ask Noah our first question this afternoon. So Noah, we've been participating in some job shadow training modules. We've actually only been able to do one because we didn't have school yesterday or on Monday, but we're going to catch up with that module this week. But can you tell me a little bit about what stood out to you about our module with West Virginia American Water?
What I've learned through the training modules is that I've learned a lot about unconscious bias and how comments, even though perceived as positive by us, may be positive. They might be negative to people on the other side, which is called negativity bias. And I'm looking forward to meeting with a whole lot of new companies in the following months.
Okay, so Xander, I'm going to ask you our next question. So if you want to step in here. All right, so Xander, we are matched with West Virginia American Water. So we happened to learn about them during our first week, and then they're actually our capstone project partner. We'll be working with them throughout this entire semester. What are you most excited about with our capstone project?
I'm looking forward to this project for many different reasons. It will help build on my leadership skills and my problem-solving abilities. It will also be a really cool experience to see what it would actually be like to have this job at West Virginia American Water. And one thing I've learned is that West Virginia American Water has a lobbyist in Charleston.
Yeah, we actually met with the president of West Virginia American Water last week as part of our capstone or as part of our mentoring call. And it was amazing just to hear him talk about all the different entities within West Virginia American Water that we hadn't really thought, were part of being public works. So that's been really interesting so far to learn about all of those.
Yeah.
We've also had weekly mentoring sessions. So we do these sessions on Wednesday morning. And so Addie, you're going to talk a little bit about that. So can you share one thing that you hope you can learn from our mentoring sessions?
I've enjoyed the past 2 mentoring sessions. I hope to learn how the overall company works by putting together the jobs we learn about. At our mentoring session this morning, we learned about how West Virginia American Water is influential in West Virginia politics by having lobbyists actively involved in our state legislature.
Yeah, it was. We actually had a class discussion after our session this morning about how much politics actually plays into public works and public utilities, and how being in the know about the things that are happening at the state level and locally in your community are important. So I'm just going to close our Student Expo here with a few comments from myself as the teacher. So we embedded this internship course into our leadership class here at Washington High School. And this was important for me to implement because I felt like real world experience brings value and meaning to our educational settings for our students. The job shadow training modules provide insight into the vast careers that are available here within West Virginia. But it also helps our students develop employability skills and emphasizes those traits that will be helpful for students as they transition into post-secondary education or straight into the workforce. Through our capstone projects, my students and myself, we're both learning a lot about a subject that we know nothing about, which is public water and public utilities. However, our weekly Teams calls with West Virginia American Water and their employees have been extremely beneficial, and not only providing the content knowledge that we need to be successful, but also developing our STEM skills. And I say ours because mine are developing just as much as our students. And also cross-curricular skills that they will use throughout whatever career field they go into, whatever options they choose outside of the high school setting. So again, I would just like to thank you, the Education Alliance, for sponsoring this project and allowing us to be a part of it. West Virginia American Water for being our capstone partner, and then all of the other businesses and companies throughout West Virginia that we'll be hearing from more throughout the rest of this semester. So thank you guys for the opportunity.
Thank you, Caitlin, and Washington High School students for sharing your journey with us. If you've had this, if this program has impacted you this much in just 1 or 2 sessions, it's going to be very exciting to see by the end of the semester where your students are.
Yeah, that's right.
Great. Okay, now I'm pleased to share our opportunity announcement that Brad Smith alluded to at the beginning of today's program. The Education Alliance is excited to share with you today an innovative opportunity for West Virginia high schools to participate in a year-long professional learning community, a PLC, that studies, observes, and learns how to build out a career pathway initiative with industry partners in West Virginia high schools. I'd like to walk you through that timeline. So today, your school can sign up on our website to receive all future Career Pathway PLC updates and to be invited to the technical assistance workshop that will get into all of the details. Then in January of 22, we will issue a school application that outlines the benefits, resources, and school expectations of those joining the Pathways PLC. Then in March, we will identify the participating schools. So by fall of 22, we will be launching the Career Pathways PLC. If you want to sign up to be notified, please go to our website, educationalliance.org. So now to give you a sneak peek at some of the work that the PLC will support, I'm pleased to introduce Lisa Deck. Lisa is the program manager at Purdue University's INMAC Manufacturing and Competitiveness Center. She works with employers, students, schools, and community stakeholders to scale up and sustain critical programs around manufacturing and STEM-related coursework and careers. Lisa's going to share with us her expertise on professional and technical skills necessary to be successful in the workplace. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Amelia and Olivia, for inviting me here today. So your community, your area is a little different than mine because I have miles and miles and miles of flat ground and corn and soybean fields. So coming to West Virginia is always enjoyable to see the mountainous area and just the overall scenery. So what I want to share with you today is the process in which we at INMAC embrace when working with industry and education and community stakeholders. We believe that it's important to be able to build out this framework and build these foundational skills from K to 12 all the way up into post-secondary. So as we look at what that can look like in your area, we talk about pathway systems. Sometimes, maybe many of you sitting in this room may think that the word pathway is a little misused at this point. I know I hear it all the time in the avenues that I'm involved in. But when you hear me speak about pathways, you'll always hear me say pathway systems, because it's truly a systematic approach that we have to take to be able to sustain and be successful as we work at looking for intentional employer and educational involvement for our students coming out for high demand, high wage jobs. So on that systematic approach, I always believe that there's some key people that have to be in the room when you start this conversation. Companies, industry, although I specialize in manufacturing, I worked in manufacturing for 13 years before moving into workforce education. That's kind of my area of expertise. We've also built out pathways in other STEM fields in IT, and I actually did some in healthcare prior to going to Purdue. So you want to, make sure that it's not just a sequence of courses. It has to be very intentional. We have to look at what are the needs of your industry, and are we meeting those through what we're teaching our students? And then, of course, as you've heard it many times today, the importance of the project-based, work-based learning, internships. I'm hearing it called youth apprenticeships now. There's a lot of things out there that it's being called, but the bottom line is that we're giving students an opportunity to hear, see, touch, smell, feel, whatever the sensory that you want to use, but we're really getting into the nitty-gritty of what it is that they're looking at. That way, when they leave high school, they're making an intentional decision on what their next steps will be. And then as Sally mentioned, we really look at embedding what those academic, technical, and professional skills or durable skills will look like. And as we build these pathway systems out, we make sure that we include all three of those components into not only the curriculum, but the work-based learning portion of it. So, you know, our ultimate goal is for students to leave with a skill set, an opportunity to make decisions, hopefully help them to be college debt-free. You know, I work for a four-year institution, so I am all about post-secondary education. But statistically, and you'll see some statistics here in a moment, we have to stop sending everyone into a four-year, four-year program if they're not ready. So let's give them some opportunities to lay that groundwork and be ready. So the process that we use when building out a pathway system is fairly simple. We assess the situation, speak with data. It's one of the things I was taught in manufacturing very early on. You know, if you cannot speak with data, then we may be going down the wrong road. So one of the common mistakes that collaboratives make is that they go into the collaborative and they start thinking, I want to build out this pathway. And they think they already have all the answers of what it is we're wanting to build out. But there's that sequence of doing some workshops and opportunities to make sure that we're building out the right thing. So we do that then when we talk about the collaboration piece, bringing the right people to the table. Who's the decision makers? Who are the doers? All right. Making sure that we have all those key people in the room that can be a nice blend of all of that. Because let's face it, if we just have all high level folks in a room, and many of you sitting in this room are probably very high level in your organization, we have to have those that aren't, you know, are the doers that are going to be able to be in those trenches and help us build this thing out. So that whole picture is quite important. And then as we develop, so when we bring this group together, we look at what our vision is and really what our why. We have to find out, why are we truly doing this? In manufacturing, I always say it's the Monday morning syndrome, right? When we talk about workforce deficits and crisis. Well, what is the Monday morning syndrome? They need enough people Monday morning to run the lines or to do their job or to make sure things are up and going. And we want to be more proactive than reactive to that syndrome. And so that's what these systems is all about, is making sure that we're looking at the whole picture and planning it out. So as part of that other development piece, we do what's called a skills mapping exercise. And in that exercise, we let industry speak. We let the educators speak. Then we talk together in that group, and the community stakeholders that are in the room, people like the Education Alliance that are, you know, helped as that liaison in those conversations. Because, you know, I'll pick on Mike Bush here for a minute, just because he's one of the few people I know in this room. But Mike, you know, he's not in the business for education, right? And, you know, the educators in the room aren't in the business of manufacturing. So for us to be able to understand what that looks like, no matter what sector we're talking about, it's pivotal in building out these processes. And then we plan and we launch, right? You have to have a marketing plan. I always tell people we can have the most beautiful curriculum map and a plan that we can have for our interns and a industry training plan. But if we don't market it and tell our story and have parents on board, then it isn't going to work. All right. Then we just have a really pretty piece of paper. So making sure that we have that communication plan, and then like any other program, evaluate it. You know, where are we in that process? So real quickly, some of the key things that I look at when building out, and again, I'm speaking manufacturing today, but we can certainly adapt this to any sector that, you know, that you're thinking about building out. We look at what does the future skilled team member looks like. And I think that Dave said it very well earlier about that being adaptable and having that those durable skills, because they're pivotal. And what we're finding is that so much of that is lacking. And when we're get to the internship piece of these pathway systems, are they able to be coached or trained? Are they a team player? Are they able to learn, right? Are they willing to learn? You know, being able to be accountable to, and when I show you here in a moment, a best practice, a system that we built out with Toyota in Indiana, when we sent out the student handbook and the students were like, oh, we can only miss 7 days. Yep. You can only miss 7 days. Yep. And is that a semester or a year? That is for the year. All right. So those are skill sets that we're teaching and helping them to understand. And so the other piece of it is being a systems learner. So as we build out a pathway system, and if you all choose to sign up and become part of this learning community, one of the things that I want to really take into consideration is, who is your partner? Who's the education partners in the room? What's the industry partner in the room? And under that memorandum of understanding that we typically have groups commit to, it's going to be who's accountable. All right. And sometimes that's the piece that's sometimes lacking. We can put, again, a great curriculum map together, but who's accountable in the big picture to making sure that that's transferred over to the industry and the internship. So we'll look at all of that. So I'm going to show you a quick clip for marketing.
Look like? Is it a new design coming to life? Is it the spark, the idea that sees the challenge and finds the answer? Is it the will and dedication to mold raw materials into something enduring, something powerful, something game-changing? For Toyota, potential has always been the opportunity to raise the bar, go beyond what's expected, and most of all, move us all forward.
You know, manufacturing has changed so much, even in the last 5 years. And what this program means is that we are now going to give students the opportunity to start at a much younger age to be able to learn some of these skill sets that are necessary to be successful in their career.
This program supports Princeton Community High School, Gibson Southern High School, and Wood Memorial High School, with a combined enrollment of more than 1,500 students. While currently 68% of the region's high school students enroll in college, the completion rate is only 38%. Our program would give many of these students a life-changing opportunity to begin a career in the high-tech world of modern manufacturing with state-of-the-art technology and world-renowned production practices.
It's a great opportunity not only to learn basic skills for going into a manufacturing environment, but those technological skills that continue to grow into robotics and automation that are going to be critical for a line production worker all the way up to the management of a manufacturing plant, to understand and be able to evolve as the technology evolves.
The 4T Academy is changing the perception of success for our local students and helping them to build a future that's right for them and close to home.
For Toyota here in Gibson County, I'm from Gibson County. I love this area. I've seen generation after generation come through those doors and be a Toyota team member. So as an innovative company, we can work with the teachers, we can work with the educators, we can work with the students, and we can bring them along with us, but they can also teach us things. And I am so immensely proud and humbled to be a part of the team that is rolling out this program to our community. It is absolutely amazing.
So, what does potential look like? Well, in Gibson County, it looks like this. Together, we can make a difference for our students, our community, and our future.
And together, we will.
This is the 4T Academy, changing potential into power.
All right. So in 2019, some of the Toyota team in Princeton, Indiana reached out to me and said, hey, Lisa, we'd like to bring you down and talk to you a little bit about what can we do? We have at that time, they had 750 openings in their facility, and they were robbing Peter to pay Paul, literally. trying to find workforce. And they're like, we need a long-term solution for this. We need to be looking at innovative ways to recruit our students and keep them in our area or surrounding counties. And so we sit down and we started the process that I shared with you earlier. We assessed the situation. We looked at the data. You saw 68% of Indiana high school students were leaving high school to pursue a post-secondary degree of some sort, but only 32% were graduating. Most of them were leaving with college debt, but no job. Some of them were completing their 4-year degree, but never used that degree or went into the field in which they studied, and they had debt. And so as my passion emerged of how do we prevent this? What are we doing wrong? I'm a parent first and foremost, and now a grandparent. So what is it that we need to do to make sure that we don't make these mistakes with our next generation? I mean, maybe it's not a mistake, right? My career path kind of was chosen for me. I was successful. I have a master's degree. I did everything that, I think my parents wanted me to do, but I went a completely different direction than what I originally thought I was going to do. And I think back, did I have enough information to make a good decision when I left high school? And that's what I think we want to make sure that we are giving students an opportunity to learn as much as they can about what careers they're looking to possibly go into before they pursue it. All right. So we came together and we sit down and we did our vision and we came up with the mission. So their mission is simple: to provide students an innovative educational experience, right? That couples with hands-on learning, on-the-job training, and preparing them for a successful and rewarding career. The one cool thing about Toyota is that if students complete the 4T Academy, they're offered a full-time position with the company. Toyota also promotes that they promote literally from within. So if I was to leave high school, graduate from the 4T Academy, possibly start maybe just on a production line, but it's a high wage, high demand job. They get 401k and benefits, vacation, and everything that goes with it. But maybe I decide I want to do something else. I believe it's over 95% of their team members are promoted from within. So the sky's the limit if the student wants to take that route. So that's how this mission came about. So the statistic here in West Virginia, from the best that I could Google and find and see, so if anyone has a different statistic, please let me know. But you guys send about 52.6% of your students on to post-secondary education, but only 45% complete. Much better than Indiana. I'll lay that right out there. Much better than Indiana. So we're doing something better. You're doing something much better. But what if we could make that even a more vibrant number? Okay. So how do we do that? Well, we look at this situation in the aspect of we have business engagement, you've got innovative learning, and we have this community support. And as you're growing that out, we look at what does that look like in a high wage, high demand job. So when we built out the 4T Academy in Indiana, we sit down with the educators in the room. And remember, I said we did some different workshops and we worked through those technical skills, the academic skills, and those professional skills. We worked with our post-secondary partner because we wanted these students to come out with some sort of a potential credential. All right. And again, I think every state looks a little different, but for Indiana, this is what we looked at. So this is a really busy slide, and I'm sure we'll share all this with each of you. But in the big picture, what I really want to focus on is not necessarily the classes that we're teaching these kids, but the number of hours that they're in the Toyota Indiana facility with on-the-job training. These are high school students that are getting over 900 hours of hands-on learning and training. So you can call this project-based learning, work-based learning, internship, youth apprentice, all those words that are out there right now. But the big picture is that they are leaving informed. They will know what this looks like before they walk across their high school stage. All right. Now, those classes are important. Don't get me wrong. And believe me, we've spent lots of hours talking about what that looks like and how we can get students some credentials out of it. The other thing that we looked at, again, we call it employability skills. That's what our state has, is an employability standards. But these are durable, right? So we embed these in what's being taught at the high school and what's being taught at the Toyota Academy. So there's 2 academies. Okay, for juniors and seniors, there's the high school academy, and then there is the Toyota Academy. Although it's the same thing, it has 2 different teachers. High school teacher is teaching high school curriculum. The Toyota trainer is teaching Toyota culture, 5S, lean manufacturing, all of the things that, to have that foundational skill will be taught. So those are just a few of the courses that they teach at Toyota to these students. Again, we back this down. I mean, I'm all about the ecosystem, right? So although the academy functions out of that junior and senior year, I always call it back mapping. So we'll back map and we'll look at what that looks like for sophomores, for freshmen, what we can be doing in middle school and elementary to build awareness and perceptions. We at Purdue, my director, Sasha Harrell, she is doing her PhD on perceptions of manufacturing with elementary students. And it's absolutely it's fascinating on what they don't know. And we know that even students going into the high school level know what their parents do, their grandparents, possibly maybe their friends' parents. So we want to make sure that we're being mindful of that. So I know my time is limited, so I'm going to try to rush here just a little. So the high school academy is taught with a high school teacher. They're juniors and seniors. Right now, we follow the CTE pathways that Indiana has developed. And it includes 2 spaces. There's a classroom space and a lab space. These are in Princeton High School. So we have 3 county high schools that come to 1 into the high school academy. The Toyota Academy has a trainer. They have juniors and seniors. They teach their core trainings. They also have project-based, work-based projects that the students work on. And we're actually expanding that right now for the next year. And in the second semester, the senior class will be at Toyota 4 days a week in a paid internship, 4 hours a day. So they'll go to their home school for their senior classes, English, government, econ, civics, whatever we want to call it. So what they have to have, right, to graduate. And then the other half of that day, whether morning or afternoon, they're being bused to Toyota for their training. And so they're getting paid quite well to show up for school. So here's just a few pictures and why these are so important. The bottom is the high school academy. The top is the Toyota Academy. So what they did in Indiana was they had a warehouse where they built the Sequoia. It was a low volume car. So they are a full assembly plant. The cars roll out of their buildings, right? And so in that warehouse 11 where they built the Sequoia, they built that classroom. And you'll notice in this classroom, there is no ceiling. They left it open so that the students could hear, smell, see, and experience what's happening every day out there while that car is being built. All right. Over to the side are just some of the different equipments that they use, the trainers. So they have a simulation of a walking line that students will learn on. They have virtual reality painters, so paint booths. They also work on door panels and some other virtual reality opportunities. So this is our first class. So, you know, we launched this thing in a pandemic. It was quite wild ride, to be honest. But we went ahead and launched. It was a plan. We said, we're going to do this. So of course, as all of you have experienced as educators, you can just imagine what that looked like in a manufacturing facility as well with high school students. But we started with 31 seniors, and because of COVID, we did lose some because of that. Others was because of attendance. And we graduated 21. Of those 21, 18 of them were offered full-time jobs. All right. 3 were accepted into the AMT program. And there were a couple that were not offered full-time jobs, and they were put on a probationary type period, and both of them was because of attendance issues. So they had an opportunity to gain back what they lost in the process. They graduated from high school, but they still had to kind of prove themselves. So listening to these students talk about their experience was very emotional, to be honest. We did a graduation with these students. They got cords to wear around their neck at graduation. They had their acceptance letter. There was a signing ceremony for those that signed and hired on full time. And to hear their stories, I mean, one young man and one of the questions you may have for me is, what's the demographics of these students? And I'll tell you, they were all across the board. We had pre-engineering students in 4T, and we had students that this was their last ditch effort to graduate from high school. So that's how broad the spectrum of the demographics are for our students. Some of the challenges and barriers you'll see up here, again, we pulled 3 school corporations together, 3 different superintendents. You can only imagine what that looked like in a room some days. You know, don't take my students, you don't take my students, I don't teach that class, but we worked through it. All right, and so we were able to sit down and look at, again, and I would always tell people, let's go back to what's important here, and that's students, right? So, and that, you know, equipment costs, who's going to pay the teacher, those were some of our barriers. But we stuck with these key measurable outcomes, and we said these key KPIs will be our Bible, and we're going to follow these, and we're going to track these, and we're going to see how successful we are along the way. So we looked at what the placement was after high school. We looked at what the enrollment versus completion would look like. We took what we're going to track promotion rates. So I'm happy to announce that one of our students that completed the 4T Academy last May, and it's October, has already been placed into a team leader training program. So he's 18 years old, and he's on track to be a supervisor in the next couple of years. So, I mean, these are the type of programs that's our goal, right? To always make sure that we're reaching our highest potential. And then the diversity in the program. So one of the things in Indiana that in Gibson County specifically is we don't have a whole lot of people of color. And so we want to make sure that we're opening these programs up to everyone and have inclusion, and make sure that that everybody has the opportunity to be in this program. I said earlier, marketing and communication is absolutely key. The video we shared with you is what they use as a recruiting tool to high schools. They're getting, other marketing material put together. But what we found was the parents were kind of the hard nuts to crack for Indiana, at least. And they were like, well, I don't want Sally just, working on the production line. That's not what our goal for her is. And so they would field those questions. And we had Leah Curry, which I think a lot of you know, in the room and said, well, you know, I started as an intern at Toyota and I'm now the president of the organization. And so we talked about opportunity to grow and move up. So that marketing and communication is key. And then we also spent a lot of time on sustainability. When you get a group in the room of industry, whatever industry sector we want to talk about, it can be healthcare, it can be IT, it can be ag, it can be manufacturing. Everybody wants to know who's going to pay. Who's going to pay? Who's going to write the check? What's this going to cost me? Right? And so as we look at that sustainability, it has to be in the discussions from the get-go. We don't want to wait until we've invested time and energy to build out a program to say, well, I'm not sure who's going to pay for it. Right? So we looked at the sustainability piece of it and who's going to pay for the instructor, the transportation. I told my team at Toyota, I had no idea how expensive transportation was until I started doing this work. And it's a huge cost to the schools. And so that's a big piece of how, one of the things we have to take into consideration. So, as we look at all of this and that sustainability and that funding structure, we just have to keep in mind, how do all these pieces fit? And we can overcome those challenges and barriers if we do it together. And so the quote that, I believe Dave had said earlier, and I don't have it written down here word for word, but it's true. We have to be doing it together. And industry has to support education. Education has to support industry, because you're producing our future workforce. And we know that our country is in a crisis. You all watch the news, you follow what's happening. Our unemployment rates are pretty low, to be honest, but we're still looking for people to work. And so we've been talking about this now for probably 15 years that I've been involved in it. And now it's like, oh, shoot, we're in a crisis. And so these programs will help. It's not going to be the be all end all. There's a lot of things that have to happen, but programs like this can help us to inform students to make those good decisions moving forward after high school, so that they don't lose time in their career. Okay. So I know I'm over, and so this is going to be super quick, but this is just one of the skills, things that we do during a workshop. And then we talk about, what do we want to do for early awareness? Superintendent Birch talked about early learning and the importance of that, all the way up to the career planning and college planning piece of it. And so, we set and that we list out, what can we be doing to help bridge that gap? Or is it bridging a gap, or is it connecting the dots? And that's kind of what we want to look at. Another exercise that I do with the group is, I always say, where are we today? All right. What tools do you have in your toolbox today to be successful? Where do we want to be in 5 years? And what does that look like in the middle? And that's going to be your action items. How do we get there? So I know that was really quick. And I don't, am I to reiterate on the timeline, or do you want to talk? Sally? Okay. So I encourage all of you to sign up for this RFP, because being able to sit down and bring these key people in a room together will be, it'll change the lives of your students. It truly will. So thank you all very much for having me here. I appreciate it.
Lisa, thank you so much. Your program is so exciting, and we can't wait to work with you as we launch the PLC here in West Virginia. I'd like to thank our lead sponsor, Srini Matam, president of Toyota Motor Manufacturing, West Virginia. And I'd like to invite him, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. To share his perspective on this opportunity. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Srini Matam, president of Toyota Motor Manufacturing, West Virginia.
I'm excited to announce a unique opportunity in West Virginia that began at Toyota, Indiana. I've shared the program with my friend, Brad Smith, and he agrees it has merit to scale. In the coming year, we're working with the Education Alliance to pilot a career pathway initiative. We want to invite our schools to join us in this learning process. If your school would like to learn more about this, please visit educationalliance.org. Thank you for helping us spread the word to students, educators, and businesses.
Well, this has been an excellent summit. I wish we had more time, but we do have 3 action items for you. First, your feedback is very important to us. Please take a minute now to complete the brief survey. For our in-person attendees, there's a copy of it on the table. Please fill that out and leave it there for us to pick up. And then for our online attendees, there is a survey link in the chat. Please go there, take 1 minute. It's very simple, and your feedback is so important to us as we build future programs. If you valued today's programming and would like to make a gift to the Alliance, please go to our website, educationalliance.org/give. That's GIVE. And then we'd like to invite you to continue in dialogue with us, and we encourage you to visit our website to sign up and learn more about the Career Pathway PLC that you've heard about from Lisa this afternoon. Again, our website is educationalliance.org. Finally, and we're right on time, I'd like to express my appreciation to our generous sponsors who are all acknowledged in today's materials. Please look over this and see the folks in the community who make our work possible and thank them. And we'd also like to give a special thanks to Toyota Motor Manufacturing West Virginia for their lead sponsorship. We couldn't do what we do without you. Lastly, I'd like to ask for a round of applause for our wonderful speakers today. Thank you all for giving us your time this afternoon, joining us here in person and online. We are so glad you were able to be here for this summit and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.